Yeah.
So I mean, it's just kind
Yeah,
of
we were just having a
And then like, if you want to say like something like, and that's bananas, like you're talking to the audience for some reason, you want to say something like you're talking to the audience.
The Office.
Call it out.
Hi, I'm Scott Reynolds.
And I'm Kathleen Pogany with the Reynolds team.
And on today's podcast, I'm very excited to be able to introduce you to Austin Dingwall, who owns an architecture firm here in town. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Excited
me.
to have you.
Yeah, great.
I'm glad we were able to get everything scheduled, and so I just want you want to like maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Sure. When you got started and.
Yeah. Well, my name is Austin Dingwall, and I grew up in the Midwest, Michigan, born and raised. Went to the University of Michigan.
Midwesterner?
I'm a Midwesterner. That's why I'm smiling.
And then, became an architect. I did some working at companies in Los Angeles and Atlanta and some firms in Michigan.
Right.
Got a whole bunch of experience with different project types, commercial, healthcare. And then when I moved to Vero Beach a little over 10 years ago, got into the high-end residential market and haven't looked back.
Wow.
What brought you to Vero Beach? We're just a little blip in Florida. I'm curious.
I followed my wife. My wife is a pharmacist. She got a residency at, it was Indian River Hospital at the time, now the Cleveland Clinic. It was a 1-year residency, but we came here, bought a house, had some kids, and now we're here.
Yeah.
That happens when you move here.
Yeah. Kind of fell in love with it.
Paradise.
So you're doing mostly residential on the luxury front, right?
Yeah. Okay. We do a mix, but I would say like 80 to 85% of our projects are residential at the moment.
And all beachside, or are you sprinkled around town?
We're sprinkled around town, but again, I would say the vast majority is beachside. Yeah.
So, sometimes we get buyers that are doing custom homes, or they're thinking about building a custom home and like where to start. And, and I'll be honest, like a lot of times I think a lot of realtors, they'll start with the builder and then there's sometimes like, should you start with an architect? And, and so what are your thoughts on that?
There's no wrong way.
Okay.
There's, many paths. Ultimately, the goal is to get a house or a remodel or whatever you want built to the way you want. So it's really no one size fits all solution.
Okay.
I have quite a few projects that the contractor came to me with a client that they have.
Okay.
And I have projects where I developed a relationship with the client and went to the builder.
Right.
So as long as you get the right team, it doesn't matter what order you get them.
That's what we did when we just finished building our house in Central Beach, and we started with the builder, and then started and he had me like send me to a few websites to look at homes, and he said just buy whatever, buy a plan, and then that way you have the rights to it. Right. And then our architect will be able to modify
customize it for you.
Yeah, sure. Customize. That way, we're not sitting there staring at a blank sheet of paper.
Right.
Drawing squares.
And again, that is a perfectly legitimate way to go.
Yeah.
Most of the projects I do, we do start with a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah.
And go from scratch. But a lot of our projects, the homeowner has come with a sketch or a plan that they've seen online just as a starting point, and we can integrate those with the new design.
So funny story. My wife had like 4 or 5 years of vision. And so she put it all into a concise folder, and we scheduled our first meeting with the builder. And
you scared the builder.
Information overlay.
We gave it to him, and he came. She left the room for something, and I came in, and he said, "Have you seen what she gave me?"
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's her vision.
Yeah.
That's what So
well, we get that a lot now with Pinterest boards.
Right.
It's so easy to pin, and it's just look at someone's Pinterest board, and some are very concise, and some have hundreds of pictures to go through. And It's good though because it gives you an idea.
A reference.
Sometimes it's not like I want this specific thing or this specific thing. It's I like the feeling of it.
Right.
You know, what is it supposed to be to the person? Because these people are living in their houses. You know, they want it to feel good.
That's interesting you said that because even when showing houses, it could be everything on their checklist, but when they walk in, it's like, well, this one just feels, I hear that word a lot, feels good.
Yeah.
And speaking of houses and showing houses and all, you know, what is the relationship between the architect, the builder, the engineer? Because we were working on a project and I was a little confused because I didn't ask all these questions up front and I didn't know who had what duties and how they worked together.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, we'll start with the contractor or the builder. They are the ones that are actually physically putting your house or your remodel together. They're hiring the guys, they're buying the materials. They're the ones that are actually coordinating the construction. And a lot of times they're called GCs or general contractors because they do then use subcontractors to do, you know, all the specifics. So they're overseeing the entire project with plumbing, drywall, electrical, all of those trades, whether they do it in-house or not. They generally oversee.
They're executing the plan, if I was to oversimplify it.
Yeah, they're executing the vision, right?
Right.
So the other side of that is where's the plan come from? Right. Where does the vision come from? And a lot of times it comes from a plan online. Other times it comes from an architect. The architect acts as the designer. Right. Actually, the architect has, I like to break it down into 3 roles during the project lifetime. The first role is designer. They come up with the design, they show the design to the client. You work with the client to figure out, you know, what they want. And you settle on a design. The second role is making construction documents. And those are the instructions to the contractor. How do you make this design that we've designed? Where do the walls go? What dimension are these things? What thickness? What is the materials? You know, so that's the second role. We're basically making a manual, a construction document set to give to the contractor. You also need that construction set to get a building permit.
Yeah, right.
So it's you know, built into that process.
Yeah.
And then the third role is during construction, the architect takes a step back and acts as the owner's representative. And what they do, they have to take a step back from their own work and they just say, I'm looking at this project that's going under construction with the contractor. Is what the contractor making matching the instructions? Right. Because, you know, they don't always have to, or sometimes things come up in the field and there has to be adjustments and that's fine. You know, sometimes a contractor can just do it and they can make the adjustments. And sometimes there's questions that only the architect really knows. For example, you have a room that's 10 foot by 10 foot. I don't know, something happens and you can't make it that dimension. Well, why was that dimension in the first place? You know, maybe a contractor doesn't know that you had a 10-foot cabinet that needed to go on that wall. So if you make it 9 feet, the design doesn't work, right? So what are the other options? You work with the contractor and the owner on that front. Right. So those are the 3 different hats that the architect wears.
So, oh, I'm sorry.
That's the piece. That's the piece right there that just listening to you as someone that, you know, I've been in the real estate business for 22 years. That third piece is the piece where I think is where tons of value is.
I agree.
The other 2 pieces, you know, as someone that's been doing it for a while, you kind of makes a lot of sense.
Well, yeah.
The third piece,
they're all valuable. We're so valuable.
No, but I mean that third piece of just making sure that it's being like almost representing making sure that the vision is being executed.
Exactly. And we call that the design intent. You know, if you have to change something, as long as the design intent is what matches the documents, then you're good. So I will say that the architect doesn't have to be involved in all those. Some people, I know the contractor. You don't need to look. You don't need to help us out with that part. And so a lot of people do see these as optional. And strictly speaking, very little, they are optional. An owner doesn't have to retain an architect for those services. But I do think there's a high value there that can sometimes be overlooked.
So you're visiting the site often for the ones that does that require you to be on site a lot, I would imagine?
Yeah, at least once a week. We just general check the progress. We make sure we
the rooms
go
are
around. Make sure everything is per plan. We can't look at every single nail, but just in general, if something looks off, we bring it to the attention. And more often than not, we go more than weekly because the contractor will have a question, and the contractors here, there's a lot of good ones that like to work with architects because it takes that burden off of them. We're responsible. I don't know exactly which way to go. We'll ask the architect, it's the first call, and we'll work it through with them. There are certain contractors or builders that, prefer to do that themselves. And there's some that are better than others,
Would you say what percentage of your clients have you involved like that deeply when you're used?
Most. I would say probably like 75%.
Yeah, I would say that's very valuable to have all that, especially since it's the vision that you came up with together.
Exactly. So. Yeah, we have that history and also that knowledge, and it's just more of a team effort all around.
And we had to do a few, I was going to talk to, we kind of talked off camera, I think last week about it, is about revisions. We had to do, you get into the field and everything's not exactly the way it was planned. And then there's adjustments, and then you have to do revisions and then send that back through permitting.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you got an updated plan.
Right. And that's, just by necessity that you have to have the architect to update the plans. So when the building department comes and says, you submitted this for permit, it's totally different. What gives? You have sign off from the architect of record.
So how would you describe the difference between like a architect and civil engineer?
Yeah. Well, so that's very interesting because
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Don't you take that?
Okay. Well, so engineers in general have a lot of the same responsibilities as an architect. They do design, they do construction documents, and a lot of times they're involved in construction. Really, the difference is what they're looking at, right? A civil engineer looks at grading, they look at the site, they look at drainage, a lot of the infrastructure that goes into a project. A structural engineer, is the project going to fall down? We got to make sure that it holds up. And
more structural.
In a lot of different areas in the country, a structural engineer is optional because, if you have a wood frame house, there is a rule. You put the studs at a certain distance and it's going to stand up. In Florida, we have hurricane code. We have not just the wind that blows things down potentially, but uplift that could lift up the house. So the houses have to be anchored. They have to be structural. And
all the strapping.
You need a structural engineer to assist with that.
I was just trying to do some studying up on some of it, and it's like the way kind of like the artist and the architect sometimes is more of the artist, and the structural engineers, like you said, is it going to fall down?
It's this paneling here. Everything you see would be under the scope of an architect. Right. And then what's behind this wall, is this concrete block? Is there a column in here? Yeah. You don't see it, but it's important so your house doesn't fall down. That's the engineer. Right.
Now, what architectural trends do you see most prominent here in the beachside area? Do you see some more than others?
You know what I love about Vero Beach? There is such a mix of styles, and those styles work. You know, there's a trend right now towards more what they're calling transitional architecture. It's the classical proportions. It's the classical detailing with just less ornament, you know? So you have those elements, just a little more clean line, a little more, I would say beachy, right?
Yeah.
But
Makes
like
sense.
but like you were talking about earlier, before we started recording, they have traditional Vero Beach, old Riamar, which is a little bit more modern, right? And that fits in. You have a lot of more kind of ocean fronts that are going more contemporary.
Right.
Clean
I've seen
lines.
a lot more.
It's so vastly different, but it melds together. You have cottage style, you know, if you want to be on a golf course or in the live oak trees that are coming down, just, you know, and that's more traditional Florida as well. And so it's just a wonderful mix.
We have a lot of clients from all over the country. Do you find that the New Yorkers or people from certain areas tend to be a little more modern or tend to be a certain style that helps with how eclectic we are here? Or is it just a random? I mean, I feel like a lot of my New York clients do tend to gravitate towards more modern houses. Maybe that's just how I feel. I don't know. It just seems...
You know, I haven't detected a pattern. You know, what I've detected is that if you have a house in a different part of the country, usually the styles are more limited. So you come to Florida and maybe this is your second house, you feel more free to express what you want. And
that's great.
Vero's a nice, like I said, a nice combination. You could do the Bahamian, you know, clean line, Caribbean, modern, and you can do postmodern, and it's just, you put a palm tree in front of it and everything looks beautiful.
So
palm trees help with everything.
So if you were, this is just your personal opinion. So if you were to build your own home, what style do you think you would go with today, at least?
Yeah, no comment.
It's like the chef making his own favorite dish.
It's like the chef be like, I like peanut butter and jelly.
What about a dream project? Do you have a project that would be your dream project that you would just, that would be it for you?
You know, I haven't come across it yet.
No.
I've been so blessed to do a variety of both styles and project types around here. And every time I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. This is like my dream. And then the next one comes along. And you're like, oh, this is neat too. Let's look at it. So I don't have one at this moment.
Do you find we were, for a while, everything was open concept, one big room. And then after COVID, people said, you know, that's going to change because people realize how they need their own special spaces for office. Is that changing at all? Do you notice, or has that?
It is. It's, you know, you've been around long enough, you'll see the cycles, but exactly, the open concept is still very nice. A lot of people love it, but, you know, it means you have to be really clean. Right? Isn't it nice to have like
a workspace,
or even you have an open kitchen, living room. You still want that kitchen to be open to entertain, but maybe you have a working kitchen. You know, we have larger walk-in pantries that are now turning into working kitchens, so you can do your cutting and your baking and everything back there, and it's separated, and it kind of almost goes back to when they had, you know, the kitchen separated from the space.
The butler pantry sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
And you put something similar in too, where he has an area behind his kitchen with all the stuff you don't want to see, and working area,
the clutter,
and an office area now. It's sort of a blend of both. It has the open concept living room kitchen. However, you have nooks and crannies. And I'm finding when my clients call, I don't hear open concept that much anymore. I used to hear it all the time. And those people with the living rooms and dining rooms, they were just sitting there trying to sell their home. But I'm not hearing that as much anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, we went a little more with the butler pantry and a walk-in pantry, but the big thing that was so hard to find on a regular floor plan, which would have been nice to draw from scratch, Janice really wanted a hallway separating the guest rooms from the family room. And a lot of the common floor plans, bedrooms were coming into the family room, right? And there wasn't that separation.
Yeah.
And then even the master suite having like this little jog, just a slight jog.
Yeah. So it doesn't open up. So you have your privacy.
Yeah.
Right. So. And then the guests have their privacy, but also if they are guests, you can kind of keep them at arm's length.
Yeah. So
and we were used to that because we grew in the Midwest, like yourself. We grew up there, and everyone was in a 2-story for the most part.
That's right.
And frame houses. So we're kind of the opposite here. So
when I first met Janice, growing up, I'd always lived in some sort of ranch type because we grew up in the South. And then when I met Janice, she's like, the 2 stories are fine. You just go upstairs to go to sleep. Everything else is downstairs. Real simple.
Here they get. Here some have 2 stories depending on where you are at. However, it's very different, I think. So, what do you like to do on your time off? Free time.
You know what?
Do you have that?
What is free time? What is this you speak of? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm yet to discover it, but I thought maybe you had somebody.
No, I'll ask you around what free time is. Fortunately, the construction and everything has been very, very busy in the area.
So you work weekends?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yes.
Guilty.
What hours do you work? All of them.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine, like, on a serious note, like, probably since 2020, 19, there was just a nutty time period. And this is bringing up something I want to talk to you about is when the cost was, I know you're drawing what to be done, but the cost was like, if you're ordering roof truss system, you didn't know what the cost was going to be.
That's right.
And so when a builder's like given a price and everything, so that's when a lot of some of the local builders started going into cost plus. Otherwise, they had to start building the cost so high just to protect themselves because they could lose money.
Yeah.
How did you deal with just the buildup of all the, having new customers, but then, things weren't getting built and executed as fast as they needed. So, but new people kept coming.
Right. Well, it is the volatility of the market. And when 6 months later, something's double the cost, how do you predict it? And how do you predict that something that used to take a year is now taking 18 months? Basically, honesty and openness and upfront and say, look, I don't know. Part of my job as an architect is to guide the clients on rough schedule, rough budget, but we base that on historical data. And so we say, look, this is what it was historically, but I'll tell you the trends are all over the place. It could be double, it could be half. You need to be prepared for it. And if that scares you, well, then we have to look and see what we can do so the worst case is still palatable.
So that conversation is really important.
It's really important, to have the expectations up front. Cost per square foot, when it goes up by multiples, year after year, and then you think to yourself, well, it can't keep going up at that rate, but I can't predict the future, so I can't guide. I can say what it is now. I can say what it is in the past, and I can tell you that it's been just wonky.
The builder was really good with managing timelines and expectations of that, and we got our final plans and they were in permitting. And he's like, "We need to order windows." I'm like, wait a minute, we don't have our plans approved. He said the window sizes aren't going to change. We need to order windows.
Yeah, well, a good contractor will do that.
And like we need to order roof truss. And so
exactly.
I'm like, and so that worked out to be really, really good. But it took me my homework as a customer was pretty high at first because a lot of things had to get decided so that I wasn't in a 18-month build
in a
period.
jam. Yeah. And it's been difficult about the past few years because the construction industry does adapt, right? Something changes, and it has been leveling it out a little bit. But like when roof trusses and windows were a long lead time, contractors learned, okay, for the next part, we're going to do this. So we're not. The problem was, it was always unexpected things that were coming up. You account for this, and then all of a sudden your appliances are 18 months out. Okay, so then you order your appliances before you start even designing the house, and then all of a sudden the nails to install windows.
The little things.
There's a shortage. So for a while, it was very, very hard to predict, even for the most planned out project, and a contractor who's on top of things. It's just expect the unexpected. Take what you have, multiply it by 150%, so you're not surprised at the end.
Well, at least you're getting to build exactly what you want. And hopefully when you're building for yourself, it's for a long term.
Exactly.
So, all that's baked in, and you're not having to remodel someone else's stuff, and you're getting it exactly the way you want it.
Yeah. The important thing is the end product,
right?
Because that's what you live in year after year after year. And that's why it's just the expectations. If you think it's going to take 12 months and it takes 18, you have a sour taste in your mouth. If you think it's going to be 18 and it is, or less, then you're happy.
Over. You want to say 24, and then they'll be happy that it's 18.
So kind of shifting some gears, I was doing some reading about architects, and it was, the whole article was talking about how the architect made everything much more efficient and made it exactly the right way the first time, as opposed to kind of making a lot of changes or not exactly what was needed. Do you see things the same way? I mean, I know it's kind of but
yeah, I like that article. Let's send it to everyone.
That's not reality all the time, right?
But it, I mean, as long as they stay realistic too,
a little bit of planning goes a long way,
right?
That's that's what our job as architects is to think about, and our experience of what can hold things up, what can make things easier, that kind of thing can definitely make a project go more smoothly.
Are there regulations I know permitting seems to be an issue sometimes here. Do you see anything specific beachside that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, I think, especially for folks that are from different parts of the country, the hurricane codes, the wind codes are definitely something to be aware of. You can't just order any exterior door. It has to be approved for the area. We also, in the state of Florida, have a very more stringent energy code than history, So if you are, let's say, trying for a house that has a lot of glass, you need to accommodate, those values of the windows. Maybe you need to make it tinted glass, insulated, UV, those types of things. And then a big one around Vero, and I'm not sure if it is for other parts, is the flood zones, with the waters. Constantly looking at where the flood zones are and where the house is located. And unfortunately, there's a lot of beautiful, historic, nice old houses in Vero that are below the flood zone. And it'd be great to remodel them. It's just not practical, as a you don't want to live 2 feet below the flood zone.
Right.
But also, there's some stipulations. You can only do a certain amount of remodel if your house is not conforming to the flood zone. So that really precludes a lot of older houses that just need a lot of love, and they'll be great. You just really can't put the money into it because basically it would trigger this this what they call the 50% rule,
Okay.
and you really can't do that project. So those are some bigger things around here to look out for.
I've heard that from some people. They end up tearing down because of that.
Yeah.
That's what we weren't necessarily looking for new construction. It was a 1950 something home. But we were prepared for a major remodel, but we just didn't have enough to work with. And so it was like, to demolish at that time, was to demolish the pool and everything was $30,000, and having to work around things and engineers and architects and everything, we would have spent all that in soft money and may not have this, the same outcome.
Right.
And I know people that started a remodel renovation before you started building, and you're done and they're still remodeling. So sometimes I feel like it takes a longer time if you're dealing with the existing structure.
It definitely can.
Yeah, some people were surprised that we, dug up the pool, but it was like it's in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And then you're designing a house around a 10-year-old pool, or so
that's not worth it.
So
I do say if we can, let's build around the beautiful live oak trees around here.
Yeah.
And keep that environment. But if it's something man-made, it can be man-made again.
That's great. So any closing thoughts that you may have about the current state of architecture?
Like as a whole, as a general?
Kind of putting you on
this
the spot.
This wasn't in the prepared questions.
How about any advice? If
That's a good
thinking to tear down a home and build, what would your, I'm sure, I could have used advice, and you probably could have too. But.
Yeah, I think, it's very interesting because architects are a lot of times seen as additional expense and maybe not needed. And while that's true in a very strict sense, a lot of the times, the value that they provide really, really outweighs the cost of them. And really, I say the best thing to do is get yourself a good team.
Yeah.
A good designer, a good contractor, good engineer. Everyone work together, and that is the most important part. And if your builder has the architecture part built in, and you're a good team together, then that's what works. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's really great. Make sure that you don't have 2 different or 3 different agendas going, and have a nice cohesive team working together.
Yeah, and to say in terms of trends, that I think is one of the better trends coming out there, because traditionally you have the contractor, you have the architect, and they're seen kind of set up at odds.
Right.
The contractor oversees the construction. They're always putting in check. It's like a scale. Yeah. The owner's kind of in the middle.
Picture butting heads.
Hey, I've seen some butting heads as like the architect wants it this way, and he's trying, the builder's trying to implement it the way they've done it on other jobs.
Yeah,
and it may not be the same for this particular client or this particular buyer.
Right. And so traditionally, when you have the traditional setup where someone goes to an architect and then it's bid out to contractors, and then you have this kind of back and forth where then the contractor wants to move forward, the architect's looking over their shoulder. Just by necessity, because of schedule, very few people want to spend 3 months getting bids from contractors. Right. And contractors have so much work, they don't really do a good job bidding right now. They don't need to. They have actual projects that they can work on. And like we said, all of these kind of moving parts now with the construction industry, really it's forcing projects to have the contractor on board during design, working with the architect. So it is a team through the design process, through the construction process as well, it just works that much better.
Well, the home that you guys have underway, I believe it's on Flamevine. You can, I just love construction, and I love the neighborhood, and you can just, as a layman, drive by and you can tell that there's a cohesive team. You can see the progress, and then the architectural style of it is really, really. I don't even know what to really call it, but it's really really
I bet
interesting.
you do.
Modern. Yeah, it's modern. Not contemporary, but modern.
Modern, but not contemporary.
And that is a good example because it's modeled after modern designs of the 50s, but they didn't have the same hurricane code. They didn't have the same energy code. They didn't have the same flood zone issues. So how do you make a current house up to code that has air conditioning, that has all of the things that you want in a modern house with that style? And so we did have to work with the contractor to see how we could put those together, to make it both be true to the design of the architecture, but also be true to what the owners want.
I bet you the owners, they're in the phase where they probably don't realize 100% of what they have yet. But it's amazing how the house changes from the customer's perspective, from being a construction site to progress and everything. That's going to be, I cannot wait to see the final product with that.
Yeah, me too.
I walk by it every morning, and I love watching the progress. It's stunning. That's the beauty of this beachside area, though. Like you were saying, it's just so different everywhere you go. So
ballpark, now I know no one likes time frames, but if I was to make it up, I would think, you're probably 8 months out, 10 months out.
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like it's going fairly fast, and
it's fast at this stage. It's
creating the shell.
Creating the shell is like boom, and then as someone walking down the street, you're like, "What's going on?" Nothing's happening, but a lot of things are happening on the inside, and they're going to have a stunning interior that is very detail oriented. So I think the construction will probably be a little longer than a typical project because of
there's a lot of details.
They're doing some not standard things that the contractor is all on board, but wants to figure out so they can do it right.
And you were saying how originally they were trying to use the original structure, so that caused delays because you found out that wasn't really the best way to go.
Yeah. We really want. It was a beautiful existing house.
Similar to me.
Well, we drew the inspiration. We said, you know what? It's a new house, but it has the spirit of what was there before. That was our goal.
And you can tell the efficiency is going to be there because I think within 2 weeks of them getting their permit, or 3 weeks, they had like a construction trailer, or, a workspace, so that the contractor can do work and be in an office environment while the job's going on right there.
Yeah. And that's one of those things I talk about, the value of an architect brings.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that, it costs more for a contractor to have that, but to have that on-site supervision, is almost invaluable.
Yeah, it's a lot less than redoing things.
Exactly.
And the value of time. So, well, great. Man, this has been very insightful. We will get all of your information, below, so that if anyone has questions or would like to explore their dream home or their remodel, that they can reach out to you and your team that help execute their dream.
Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
This is easy. Let's talk all day.
Thank you so much. And keep watching our, we have some very interesting, good podcasts coming up. So stay tuned to future podcasts. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.